WNYC's longtime education reporter, Beth Fertig, is an author. She took a book leave for all of last year, as you may know, to explore some shocking instances of New York City public school students who get through the system without being taught how to read. Her book is now out, and it's called Why Can't You Teach Me to Read? 3 students and a mayor put our schools to the test, published by FSG. We're so proud of Beth's original investigative work on this, and Beth, congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much.
You follow 3 learning disabled students who had to actually use the legal system to fight for the right to learn how to read. Who are these students?
The students that I met were steered to me by the group Advocates for Children of New York. And I was looking into the very low graduation rate of students in special education. Advocates for Children had done a story that the neediest students in special ed only had a 1% graduation rate. And I thought that was just amazing to me, that only 1% of these special ed students were graduating. It turned out these were the students in what the city calls District 75, the students with the greatest needs. But about 12% of the city's students are in special ed. And when I looked into the total figure, I found that fewer than 25% of them, about 20%, were graduating. And the rest were either dropping out or getting what's called a special ed diploma, for lack of a better word. They don't have to meet the state standards. They can just meet whatever their individual goals are and graduate.
Can mean graduating without learning how to read?
Which is exactly what happened to Yamilka. Now, she didn't want to give her full name, but I met her in 2006 when I did this radio series, which we called Disabling Diplomas, because it was about students with disabilities who weren't graduating or not getting real diplomas. Yamilka had graduated high school at the age of 21, knowing only 8 letters of the alphabet.
Wow.
And she was not mentally retarded, although at one point she was sort of identified that way. But what had happened to her was she came to the United States at the age of 10 with an interrupted education from the Dominican Republic. She had missed several years of schooling because of a family crisis. Her family had come here first, her parents and some of her siblings. She was left behind with her brother, and for a tragic reason, they didn't end up going to school. And when they got to the United States eventually and were enrolled in public schools in the Bronx, both she and her brother, it turned out, had learning disabilities that were never formally recognized. It took 4 years for Yamilka even to be sent to special education classes. They kept her in English as a second language classes.
Your subtitle, as I just said, is 3 students and a mayor put our schools to the test. Has the Bloomberg administration tried to react to the failure to teach students to read in new ways?
Well, these students, Yamilka and her brother, eventually persuaded the city. There's a hearing process that you can go to if you have special education needs, and under federal law, you're guaranteed an individually tailored instructional program for whatever your disabilities are. They won hearing processes.
She didn't actually persuade the education department. She took them through this legal process.
Yes.
And got, in effect, a court, I don't know if it's considered a court, but a hearing order for the city to provide her with remedial tutoring, correct?
Exactly. So there's this system that you can go through if you're in special education, and if you know about it. She didn't know about it the whole time she was in school, but her brother found out when he was in high school, still unable to read, and a guidance counselor steered him for another evaluation, and he learned that you could get lawyers at Advocates for Children and other nonprofits to challenge the system and say, this child is not being given their specialized services. They deserve to get either, more intensive tutoring or whatever it is. In this case, it was too late for Yamilka and her brother to get any services from the public schools. She had already graduated. He was toward the end of high school. So they won through this hearing process. It's not like suing the city. It's, you go to a fair hearing officer. And they each won hundreds of hours of tutoring. She won 1,500 hours. He won close to 2,000 hours. The tutoring's about $100 an hour. So the two of them together won about $300,000 worth of tutoring services paid for by the city, which is sort of an admission of educational neglect. to refund them in a way, their education by saying, okay, we screwed up. You can go for private tutoring and see if you can learn to read.
So was there a systemic response to cases like this when Bloomberg came in with his reforms?
No, this had been going on forever. This had been going on for a long time. And, there's thousands of cases like this a year. Nobody even keeps track. They can't track them specifically. I've asked the lawyers from Advocates for Children. I've asked the city. But what they do know is that the city does spend about $89 million last year, I believe it was, on students who, because of their special needs, won private school tuition, which is another way you can go if you figure out how to use the system. And so the city is, saying, my God, this is a lot of money to be spending. There was a class action suit. The city had to even expedite these cases. And so they've hired more lawyers to deal with the cases. And what they did do is they decided that by using more intensive tracking of students with data, which is part of what's happened with No Child Left Behind, by focusing on more reading interventions, they would try to lift the scores of all students, but also get these kids at the bottom so that they hopefully wouldn't have to go through things like this.